For all those with a love of the beach and surfing, this is a story for you. Matthew England grew up surfing the waves at Sydney's Harbour Beach and initially had no idea what he'd study. He now is Australia's leading oceanographer and the world's foremost authority on the modelling of the Southern Ocean. Today, you'll hear Matthew's story about a guy with a love of surfing becoming internationally recognised for his research. I'm Ian Bunston. Welcome to Monday Matters. Welcome, Matthew. Great to have you as a guest today.
Great to be here, Ian. Thanks for that very kind introduction.
That's my pleasure. Matthew, if we go back to your teenage years, did you ever imagine that a love of surfing would lead to a career studying the world's oceans and becoming Australia's leading oceanographer?
Absolutely no idea of it. I just loved the beach. I'd look forward to every Sunday getting the chance to go down. I was one of the little nippers that run around on the sand. And I used to really love swimming as well, actually. Freestyle was my thing. But also the marine biology. So yeah, I had a passion for the ocean, but more for myself, just as a person. Even as at the age of 5 or 6, it really just filled me with a lot of joy, a lot of energy. It sort of, yeah, and that energy and joy I got from being in the ocean is still there today. Something that is big therapy for me to get into the water. So a great match of that passion for the ocean was to find that you could study the ocean physics, the ocean dynamics, the ocean processes. Because academically, I never did biology, but I did do a lot of maths and physics, and to bring those two together was an amazing bit of luck, I think. Really, a bit of luck, because I didn't know the field even existed until I'd almost finished my university degree.
And what a beautiful part of the world to be enjoying the waves and the surf up there at Sydney Harbour. Matthew, as I mentioned earlier, you're now Australia's leading oceanographer, but also you're the world's foremost authority on the modelling of the Southern Ocean. You are the first Australian winner of the American Geophysical Union Climate Communications Prize. Wow, what a journey you've had. Can you tell us or give us a snapshot of your career and what led to this remarkable prize?
Yeah, I want to start by saying I feel like I'm one of maybe 20 or 30 who model the Southern Ocean. It's a very kind accolade. I know if people look back on a body of work, I guess I'm getting, I've only got about 7 or so more years of being in before I'm emeritus. So maybe that's an accolade that comes when you get towards the end of your career. But just to say, it's a fantastically challenging area of science. We have the difficulty of putting the models together that are supposed to represent reality, but fortunately, as we build bigger and better computers, we've been able to turn. And if I could show a simulation here, I would, but I won't do that. It's a chat, but it almost looks like a real satellite image of the ocean these days. The models that we use are that good, but certainly when I started in the mid 80s, the models we had were very coarse grid. They really just got the basics of the oceans in their system, and it's really not been till we've had big enough computers to model them really well. But you asked the question about my career and how it unfolded. I think I'm getting off topic a little bit, but basically, after studying sort of maths and physics at Sydney University and discovering this field of science, I then what really drew me into the field was then going and making ocean measurements. It wasn't building the models. In my early 20s, I got to travel the world, not by land, but by ocean. And what I mean by that is I'd go to, South America, and we'd leave on a cruise that voyaged around the South Atlantic. So I was away for 60 days. 50 of those days were at sea, and it was a big adventure in my 20s to go to these remote parts of the world, make measurements of the ocean, and try to understand what the measurements were telling us about the ocean circulation.
In terms of this particular prize that you've recently been awarded, that's where I first came to be aware of you on the ABC News. That's quite a remarkable achievement.
That was a fantastic thing to get the news for. And a bit of context is that all of my science peers, and I don't say this with any judgment on those that hide away. There's really not two groups of scientists, but there really are. There are many scientists who just want to work away at their science. They won't want to ever front the media because it is a bit of a challenge to put your story together for the media and to sort of sometimes come away a bit battered and bruised when you talk about climate change. And then there's others who are happy to talk in the media, and I've always really been happy to talk to the media because I really want the science that we do to be accessible to the public. And this award was recognition of my time, really dating back to about the year 2003 or four, that I've been speaking in the media, talking about how the oceans work, how they're changing, and these sorts of things. The awards out of the American Geophysical Union's annual award set, and the past winners are some of my heroes of climate change communications, the people in the US and Europe in particular who are just very vocal spokespeople about climate and climate change. So yeah, it was a great honor, a great surprise to get this award.
Well, congratulations. Feel very honored for you. Look, you've mentioned climate change, and I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Now, Matthew, this is a safe space here at Monday Matters, so you can really go for it. But I mean, there was a quote that I saw on one of your sites on the internet where you said, and this is a quote, "I felt motivated to counter lies, fake news, and discrimination, which sadly has been part of the climate change story since the early 1980s." Tell us what you really think with regard to the state of climate change.
Yeah, no, it's been a absolute battle to get the message out, and that is, it's actually a message, and the fundamental physics of climate change are so basic that it's like asking an astronomer to really go and convince the public that the Earth rotates around the sun and not that the sun rotates around the Earth. I mean, it's just fundamental physics. These greenhouse gases have been known to trap heat in our atmosphere since 1850. 1850, the science came out of the UK. All the different greenhouse gases that were measured for their heat trapping capacity. So it's fundamental physics, and we're on track to doubling the concentration, which is just remarkable, of these greenhouse gases. And basic physics of radiation tells you that traps heat and it warms the planet. Now, exactly how bad that gets is what's harder to pin down. It's anything from just kind of bad to really, really bad. And so to see the fossil fuel industry kind of hijack that conversation and say everything's going to be okay has been distressing for scientists, because we know, you saw the floods in Spain last week, absolutely phenomenal flash flooding, and we've seen flooding rains off the eastern seaboard. So to see people's lives impacted by this, and to know that it's only going to be getting worse before it gets better, is what motivates a lot of us to talking about climate change, talking about the need to address the problem. And unfortunately, the ease of addressing this problem has changed since the 80s. So the first science of climate change was pretty well established by the late 80s. And back then we had 30 plus years head start if we had got started back then. What's happened in the meantime is that we've rolled out fossil fuel burning into a lot of the nations that are now the biggest emitters, China and Brazil and India, nations that back then didn't use much fossil fuel technology. They're now surging in their emissions. It's still big in Australia, the US, and Europe. So we've got a lot more work to do, because a lot more nations have gone over to fossil fuel burning to produce energy. So we can still do a lot to save our climate, but we actually are going to see a permanent record. Geologically, we look back through time, back millions of years actually, and there'll be a record in the geological history of Earth that shows what we've done to the Earth today, in the sense of raising those greenhouse gases and seeing a big change. But we can, like I said, we can still, it's not too late to do the work to minimize the risk, but we've taken the system a long way from its normal sort of pre-industrial stable climate regime.
How would you suggest, as individuals, how can we play our small part in countering this situation?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is some of this just actually saves you money. So, we got solar panels on our roof, and we repaid for the solar panels in a matter of literally 2 or 3 years because, the energy bill savings that we got from having solar panels, but paid back the cost of installing them. So a lot of the measures are cost positive for people, for individuals. I think it's really important also to make sure your elected leaders know you care, because some of the things that are still playing out, like fossil fuel subsidies, are holding change back, and we should be having solar panel subsidies and subsidies on battery storage. They should be the things that are subsidized. So individuals should do what they can, but I think it's also really important to be aware, chat with your friends. I mean, it's not a great barbecue conversation to talk about the need to address climate change, but the more people understand that these very impactful events are linked to our greenhouse gas emissions, the better. And I know in Australia, the one everybody listening, I'm sure today, will have noticed their insurance premiums absolutely skyrocketing over the last decade. When I first called about my premium going up by about 20% one year, I was told by the person at the end of the line, this is because of the Brisbane floods. And I was like, hang on a second, I'm nowhere near a flooding plain. Why am I being hit? And rightly so. She said, we're sharing the cost burden. And unfortunately for Australia, our collective insurance bills going up. Even if you're not near a bushfire prone region, you're not near somewhere that's going to get a storm surge inundation at the coast, you're not, in near a flooding plain, you're still going to have these insurance costs. So I think at the moment everybody's being impacted.
Matthew, I'm fascinated by the Great Barrier Reef, and but when I have chats with friends and other folk about the condition that it's in now, even now there's some conjecture about exactly its state. But can you give us an up-to-date account of where you believe the Great Barrier Reef is at?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's at great risk of um, die back to a level that means very very few regions have unbleached coral. The most recent bleaching of the last 12 months. So we've had mass bleachings. They've been occurring every now and again. If you look back through the record, the return period of those mass bleachings is shortening and shortening. So there might have been one in the 60s, and then one again in the 80s, and then had a couple in the 90s, and then since in the last 15 years there's been about four or so. So it's really come down. The break in between these record warm temperatures is declining and declining because of global warming. And so we know that El Niños, for example, typically discharge a lot of heat into the coral reef region. Excuse me. Unfortunately, we can also get some mass bleaching during La Nina events as well. But the fact that we've got this underlying warming trend, excuse me, superimposed on these extreme events driven by El Nino, La Nina, means that the reef is getting less chance to respawn and regrow and build coral. Coral doesn't grow overnight. It takes a while for it to build up in the system. And unfortunately, when people go diving or snorkeling there, not everybody is necessarily clear on what bleaching looks like. I know one of my colleagues, Terry Hughes from James Cook University, he citizen science is a great thing when people get involved in making measurements, but he says that he looks at the records coming back from people recording the state of the reef, and they'll often just look at the fish. There'll be turtles, and they won't see the whiteness at the tips of the reef. That's the sign it's starting to bleach. Even fully bleached coral can be misdiagnosed. And so I get a lot of my coral reef updates from Terry, and he's distraught at the state of the reef today, partly because he knows that the climate change signal is what's causing this dieback.
Matthew, our time has gone, but thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us here at Monday Matters. You've had a stellar career. Congratulations. And we are really very, very grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us today at Monday Matters.
Thanks heaps, Ian. Great to join you. Really appreciate the time.